Hi and welcome to a new video. In this video I wanted to do a quick tutorial on the general and advanced settings within the Asus RT-AC86U router. So you can see the actual pictures of it on the right hand side. So this is actually up to a dual band, so that's got a 2.4 gigahertz 3x3 and has a 5 gigahertz frequency, and that's 4x4. So this has a processor of a 1.8 gigahertz dual core processor and 256 megabytes of flash memory, so that's for your storage, and 512 megabytes of RAM. So it does include quite a lot of the other advanced features you'll find in the Asus routers. So you have the normal WAN ports, and they're all gigabits. You have one USB 2 and one USB 3.0, so that's with the blue. And as you can see there, you can do the usual features that includes in the firmware. So this is already, I've done an unboxing video of this previously, so this does include some of the gaming features that you find in the more expensive ones like WT Fast and the Game Boost acceleration. Also, it does include the AiProtection and the two-way IPS firewall, so it's always good for the protection, and it's good all-round router this is for your home. So you can pick these up, I think, quite a reasonable price nowadays, and it does support multiple devices, and as we said, it's a Wi-Fi 5, so it's a 802.11ac, and then also Wi-Fi 4. So let's just get on to the actual settings now. So what I will go through, and I'll separate between the general and the advanced, and I'll put some timestamps in, so as this video might be a bit long for some people. And I can hopefully help you get to the right part that you're more interested in. Okay, so if we start off, this is the first time after you've set up the actual router. You can see you come here to the network map. This is the menu, and you can see here I haven't got it currently plugged into the internet, so it does show me it's not plugged in. You can see here the security level, so it's telling you it's WPA2 personal, and then you have the client list here. And if you're connected via MiMesh to another router that this is capable of, you could do that as well. And also shows you the USB 3.0 and USB 2.0 any devices connected. Again, you can then see your wireless. So you can see this is, I've got this currently set up as dual band. So it has one network name, and then the router will automatically select if my device goes onto the 2.4 or the 5. Again, I personally prefer to separate them, and I can show you that later on. You can then come down here and change that, so you can see here on the WPA2 and then the encryption and any password that you have set up. So then we go here to status, and you can see here the core, so you can see your CPU. So you can see it's dual core, so you can see the actual percentage, the RAM that's used up, and then what is connected to your Ethernet ports. That's your WAN port and the 4 LAN ports on the back, and any other information that you have here. So it's always good from the front screen, you can see everything. As usual, on the top bar here, you do have the app, so you can download the app, and it gives you the QR codes for Google and App Store for iOS. Here you could the guest network, and here it will tell you about your connected to the internet, so that's your WAN, and then anything connected to the USB ports. So it's good overall quickly. And then here is the languages it supports as well, if anyone's interested. So it does support multiple languages, and of course you've got your logout and reboot button at the top. So next we move down to MiMesh. So as we said before, this one actually supports this. This is quite a good feature, advanced feature. So you can actually connect this by either Ethernet port or one of the Wi-Fi network protocols like the 2.4 or the 5 gigahertz frequencies to another router, and you can use this as an advanced extender. And this is the custom MiMesh software. So you can see here the current firmware I have, and then also you can then click on here and it will tell you all the information about the networks, what's connected to it, and then your connection type to your other device. So and then of course you can come to system settings, and then of course here if you do want to connect it by Ethernet, so if you're lucky enough to have Ethernet connections all around, you can select this, so then the actual router will actually have use of both their Wi-Fi 2.4 and their 5 gigahertz by switching it on Ethernet. Of course you can use, like I've said in previous videos, a power line adapters and use the Ethernet through there. Of course it might be a little bit slower, but it still might be better than the Wi-Fi that you have connected. Next we go down to guest network. As it says here, you've got the 2.4 and the 5, so you do have the choice of both on here, and you can enable them here. So literally you just click enable and it will set up. It might just have to reboot your router, and once it's done that, then you'll have the guest network, and then of course then you can set up the name and password for it. Moving on, next we've got AI protection. So as we said before, this is one of the good features. So you have network protection that covers the router security assessment, malicious sites blocking, vulnerability protection, and infected device protection and blocking. Again, as I've mentioned in previous videos, don't take this and as a rule that you think, oh, you're totally protected by this. This does have some caveats with it, so always make sure you install at least a free antivirus software on your PC or even on Mac nowadays. So if we just go into the details here on AI protection, you can see we've got the tabs above. So again here we've got AI protection, and once you switched it on, you can do a scan, and then it'll bring up if you've got any issues. And you can see here I've got WPS disabled, and it says no, so that means I've got it switched on, and it advises you to switch it off. Same as UPnP and some others. So it will give you an advice here, and you can do this. This is the default setup, so if you do have anything here, then you can go in and change. So by default as well, once you switched it on, you can have the malicious site blocking protection on, the two-way IPS, and the infected device protection and blocking. And it gives you a good explanation here, so you can pause the video, and I won't go into details because you can read that for yourself. Next is the malicious sites blocking. So good, here it actually tells you a graph and information about the security event, what the threat was, and more details about the event, the destination, the source, and the time when it happened. So you can see if any malware or adware or anything like that tried to attack your network. So that's good to see. And then you have the two-way IPS. So that's basically your firewall. As it says here, protects you from DDoS attacks, spam attacks, and things like that. So it does protect you from a lot of things, as it says here on the network. And again, this is a graph to tell you the how high the severity level is of the security event, and details here. Moving on, we've got the AI protection. So this is the infected device protection prevention, and blocking. So basically, whereas it says there, the feature prevents infected devices from being enslaved by botnets or zombie attacks. So basically, it just means it tries to stop your device being taken over, and if it is sending out information, it will try and block that. Lastly, we have the for AI protection, we have the parental controls. So you can switch these on, and you have two up here. So you have the web and app filters, so you can filter and the websites and applications. So it's always good. And also you have a time schedule here, so you can switch that on, and then you can schedule certain devices, it says here, to actually disconnect from the internet. So if you've got a bedtime, you can disconnect their tablet or iPhone or Android phone, so they must go to sleep. And you can also customize that there. So next, moving on to adaptive QoS. So under this one, it has several tabs, not just quality of service, what QoS stands for. So we have bandwidth monitor. So this is the WAN and LAN bandwidth monitor. So this here, once switched on, you can see the speed. It'll give you like a graph here of the speed of each of the devices, and also the one they're connected. You'll see the bandwidth coming and going, so upload and download speeds in real time. So that's really good to see. So this is the quality of service where you can enable. As it says here, there's 3 different types. I'll just quickly go through them. So adaptive is the adaptive type that basically allows the router to adjust to apps category prioritization and network scenario. So basically it tries to work out yourself. So if you've got someone media streaming and gaming, and then surfing the web and then file transfer, say torrents, it will automatically try and reduce the speed and bandwidth of the file transfer and the web surfing to give you more bandwidth to like your Netflix or anything like that for media streaming, and also it'll try and prioritize gaming as well over the other one. So it does it more clever, and it tries and works out what the bandwidth is coming from. You've got traditional quality of service. Again, this is where you can influence it yourself. So again, around with torrents and peer-to-peer sharing. So you can then use a define. So you basically can choose under the apps what you want to do. And then you have bandwidth limiter. So that lets you set the limits on download and upload speeds. So again, if you've got a device that's or someone in the house that's constantly downloading and it's taking up all the bandwidth, you can limit them to say only 10 megabytes download and 3 upload, so you can have more bandwidth for everyone else. So that's another one as well if you really don't want the quality of service, but you just want to limit certain devices to a certain speed, so you know that they can't have anything like that. Moving on to traffic analyzer. So again, under that there's 2 tabs for statistics and traffic monitor. So once you have these on, as it shows down here, for devices and apps, and then you can sort by both download and upload, and then daily, monthly and weekly, and then you can have the in what kind of size you want it in, so terabytes, gigabytes and megabytes, or automatic. And again here it will show you the top 5 devices down here in the pie chart, and then on the graph here it will show you then how much percentage, and then the traffic and daily traffic is using that certain device, or if you switch to apps, what app is using the most. So you can then use your quality of service perhaps, or your bandwidth limiter to then say, okay, there's someone using too much on there, so I can actually throttle it a bit. Then we have traffic monitor. So again, as it says here, it shows you the internet, wired and wireless. And then down here on the graph, it will then show you the bandwidth that's happening right now, and then the data going in and out that's been sent and uploaded. Moving on to specifically to gaming. So this is one of the features of the actual router. So here you can prioritize your gaming devices. So once this is switched on, you can go to add and then add your device. So like your Xbox, your PlayStation, your PC, gaming PC, Nintendo Switch, and you get the idea of the devices. So that then will, this router will automatically prioritize them for the best gaming experience. You have here the QR codes to download the specific Asus router app. And then you can also adjust the gaming experience as well. So what it means is the settings. Next we have the open NAT. So that goes into one of the next menus. So we'll go on to that in a minute. So basically that's just for port forwarding for your devices if you're having problems with your device, your gaming device not able to access the internet or receive data from the internet. Then you have one of the internet game boost. So this is one of the features of the router. So it's called the Gamer's Private Network. So it's a kind of VPN, but it basically doesn't disguise where you're coming from or anything like that. So what it does, like it says here, automatically selects the best route for your gaming packets to reduce. So they have their own servers in Europe, America, Asia, and several of them all around, and then they'll try and direct your traffic to the fastest router for that game. So it hopefully gives you the better ping rate and less dropped packets as well. So it is a good feature to have, and as I've done in the previous videos on gaming, you'll see under the playlist on my channel, I've gone through that in much more detail, and you're welcome to watch those. So as we said, the next one is OpenNAT. So what this actually does is help you open up for port forwarding, and all we have to do is enable here, and then you can select what device you want and then open up ports on your router. Again, just be careful when you're opening up ports, because that means that you're opening them up so with amount of bots and things like nowadays that are scanning the internet constantly for open ports to try and hack you. Of course, you know, if you're just a home network, it's minimal, to be honest, threat level. And if you can't get your device working, then of course you'll have to do this manual enable port forwarding. But again, just be aware of the security implications and opening up too many. Again, we've got game profiles down here, so you've got some of the games. If I scroll down, that you can actually select, and it will automatically add them as well, and their details to the game, the port forwarding and things like that. So it's quite good to see the user interface is easy to use, and having the gaming features is a plus basically. So now moving on to USB applications. So as we said, this is really good for the router. You have basically 6 different options here. Of course, the more you use on these, of course it will use more of the flash memory, but also use up more of the RAM and the CPU. This is a fast enough CPU, dual core, and it has enough RAM, so you should be able to run most of these, but just don't expect super duper fast connections and things like that to it. So you have the AI disk, you have the server center, network printer server, so that's again if you're connecting a printer to the router to its USB port. You have 3G and 4G. Again, it does have limited support for certain 3G and 4G dongles that you plug into the USB port, so just go to their support page and double check. I have my personal experience. I've tried a few. It's never really worked that well. It's quite buggy. Your experience might be totally different, but just be wary that I did have issues when I did that. Again, if you've got a Mac and you've got basically here Time Machine, so you can back up your computer to Time Machine, you will need to have your USB plugged in here, or a hard drive. And don't forget, it will have to be a considerable size, because you know, to back up your hard drive and things like that. And then you have the download master, as they call it. So that's like basically you install that, and you can download software onto the USB. And you don't need your PC running in the background, and it will actually download. So that's quite handy as well to have as an app. But again, if you're running all of these at the same time, just be wary, it will take up a lot of memory. So just all the ones you do need, switch them on, and the ones you don't. So I just be wary of that. So going on to AiCloud. So this is their 2.0 version. So as you see, they've got several tabs at the top. Again, they've got the links there to their apps. So here you've got the cloud disk. So basically what it says here is that it enables USB attached storage devices to be accessed or streamed through the internet connected PC or device. So that's outside your network. You have smart access. So that basically enables your network PCs and devices to remotely connect to your computer, and also can wake up a sleeping PC if you have the basically the settings set up in your BIOS and your Ethernet card. If you put your PC into sleep mode, it can send a magic packet and then wake it up for you. And thirdly is the AiCloud Sync. So this is if you have Asus web storage and you pay the monthly subscription for that. If you have their cloud storage, it's like OneDrive and Google Drive. So it's their version, and then what it does then is it'll connect to that, and then it will synchronize between the two. So you've always got a backup of what's on your USB in the cloud. So that could be quite good as well. And they do have reasonable prices as well. So the next tab up here, as we said, is the AiCloud Sync. So this is where you switch it on, you add your account details for your to sync your AiCloud to it. Then you have Sync Server. So basically, once you've enabled this, first of all, this will then just allow you to give you the settings. And lastly, you can password protect this feature. So it's said here so people can't change it if they do have access already to the router and know the password and things like that. You can set up the usernames and the ports here. So it is quite good, and you can set up the duration and maximum failed attempts as well. So you can switch it on if you do want to be security conscious. And then of course you have the log, and this will, if you have these features on, it will give you a log, and if there's any errors you can identify them, so that's helpful. Okay, so that's all the general options now. Now we'll move on to the advanced settings. So the first option we have under advanced settings is wireless, and as you can see here we have several tabs. So the first is the general tab where you can have the enable smart connect. So this is what I was talking to when we first went through the network map option. So this is where if you have this on, then it means that the router itself will automatically join the 2.4 and the 5 under one network wireless network name, or SSID. So then it will automatically, so if I connect my phone, it will say, okay, this is a Wi-Fi 5 and I'll connect this to the 5 gigahertz frequency. And if it's my doorbell, it'll say, well, this is only 2.4, so I'm connecting it to the 2.4. So it will automatically do it for you. So for simplicity, that's the easiest option. But if you are an advanced user or you prefer to have more control like I do, personally, I switch this off and then I have two separate networks. So the first network will be, say, Wi-Fi 2.4 and then Wi-Fi 5. So then I know that each of which one is 2.4 and which one is 5, and then I can connect the devices myself. And then I have different passwords for each of the networks as well. It might be overcomplicated for some people, but I prefer to do that. So by faster devices like my gaming consoles and things like that, I prefer to go into and connect to the 5 gigahertz. Of course, you get more bandwidth and faster connection. But for like small things like your doorbells and your light bulbs and IoT devices, then you would connect to 2.4. But that's just a personal choice, and as you see here, you can have it on or off, and it gives you the option to switch it. And of course, you do have the option here to hide your network name, so for security, but that basically makes it more difficult for you to connect devices. And also, if a hacker really wants to go in there, they can see the hidden network anyway, so it doesn't really stop them that much. You have wireless mode, so again here it's set to auto, and then you have the authentication, so you can change that if you're in an enterprise, but most people will have this to WPA2 personal. The encryption, there's only one option, and that's the best option, AES. Then you have your passwords, your pre-shared key, you need that, and that would be displayed here. You have protected management frames, and that's disabled. Sometimes my option is required. It's just a bit of a security thing. It will slow things down a tiny bit because it's actually checking the management of the frames to make sure that the data is right. But it's entirely up to you what you want to do, and you can look that up later. This one here is the group key rotation. So as it says here, it's more for advanced users really. You don't really need to worry too much about this. It's set to the default 3600, so that means in seconds. So as you can see here, you enter 0 if you want to indicate a key just never changes, or you can up the value if you want it to change less often or down, so it changes more often. But it will lead to more disconnects, so I would advise, perhaps unless you're having issues or you're very security conscious, to leave that as the default. So next one, you have the 2.4 gigahertz. So you have the channel bandwidth, the channel control, and extension channel. Channel bandwidth is the 20 or 40, so you leave that as default because some devices will be able to connect at the 40 megahertz frequency under the 2.4 gigahertz. So that means they'll have bigger bandwidth and they'll be able to connect faster. But if you are having connection issues with especially older devices, do try 20. Because sadly most 2.4 gigahertz devices still only are 20 nowadays, even though we're coming on to Wi-Fi 6E and 6 gigahertz and things like that. So, and of course that will give you more range as well because it's the lower. So you can change that to 20. You have a control channel, so this is where you can set the channel for your 2.4 gigahertz frequency. You have the choice of 1 to 13, and again it depends on your country. So you can set that to the default, or you can leave it to the router to actually connect by itself. And then you have extension channel, so that's like the overflow, and that will automatically won't really normally give you an option unless you select a manual one here, and then it will just be above what it is. So then it's the same for the 5 gigahertz, but here you've got more bandwidth. So you've got 20, 40 and 80. So again, I'd leave it on the default. So some devices can connect at a faster bandwidth nowadays. So it'll make them faster connections. So it's best to leave that. Again, here you can change the channel for your 5 gigahertz frequency. So if you do have any issues with neighbors and things like that are clashing on the same channel, you found a channel that's more convenient for you, you can set it up here. You do have the option to have DFS channels also being able to select. So these ones will automatically switch off if it identifies radar, because these channels do interfere with the radar as well. So basically they'll automatically switch themselves off. Some devices have problems and don't actually give the option. So sometimes if you're having issues with devices like Roku's and things like that connecting on your 5 gigahertz, best to switch that off, because some of them devices on the 5 gigahertz frequency don't actually support the DFS channels. And again, here you've got the auto. And anything after you've changed, as all the menus, you just click apply. The next one is the WPS. So this is as default comes on, and I would personally recommend that you switch it off for security, because it's terrible security around here. Is basically, this is the wireless protected setup. So what this does is very convenient, where you can push the button on the back of the router and then push the button on your printer or whatever device that supports it, and they'll both connect together, and when you don't have to give a password. But it's very easy to be hacked, and for security, even the router itself, when you go through the AiProtection assessment, it actually advises you to switch it off. So I don't know why it comes on as default as on, but I would personally switch it off unless you've got really no worries about anything, and perhaps it's someone that's less technical minded and you just want to make it as easy as possible for them. Then of course have it on here. So next one is a more advanced feature. So this is a wireless bridge. So this is the wireless distribution system. I will leave this on the screen here, and just to let you know that the option is here. There's no point going through it because this is rather advanced and most homes won't even need this. We have the wireless MAC filter. So this is a security feature where you can select the network, and then you can, if you switch it on, you can then select a device. So say my Mac Mini, and you can add that. So that means that it won't be able to connect to your it will be able to connect to your router. So anything that's not on this list won't be able to connect. So basically, if you put all your devices on here, and any new device that tries to access your router for security won't be able to access it unless you put them on this list here. And it says, as it says here, it's got a maximum of 64 devices and go on this list. Again, this is a very advanced feature for a Radius server. So this is if you're in an enterprise or you do have a Radius server, something say like through pfSense or anything like that you've got set up in your network. So this is where you can connect to it, and instead of having a password like a pre-shared key like we saw before for your wireless network, they can enter a username and login. Again, this is where you've got an actual server and you enter the server details here. Next is on to professional tab. So the professional tab is where you get all the information around the wireless network. So again, I'd advise most of the time, unless you're having issues, to leave this as the default. You do have the option here to change between the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz. Most of these are defaults that are actually fine as they're set up. If you are having any issues or you don't need, you've got several Wi-Fi networks for any reason in your house, then you can adjust the performance of the router, so you can bring it down so it doesn't basically use full strength on the Wi-Fi network. So you can perhaps have it just in a few rooms or on the first floor, so it won't reach the second floor and interfere with your other wireless network. So you can adjust it there. And the other things just to make sure are on is the universal beamforming. So that basically just directs the Wi-Fi signal straight at the device instead of bouncing it around. And this is the multiple user, so that's the MIMO, so that's multiple inputs, multiple outputs. So it means it can send and receive information at the same time, and they're the main ones you want to make sure they're enabled by default. and they should be. And then lastly on the tab up here is the roaming block list. So again, as you can see here, it says you can add devices into the roaming deny list, and the devices will not be able to roam. So basically this is for AiMesh. So if you've connected this into an AiMesh network, you can set up certain devices on this block list so they can only connect to certain routers within there. So if you've got 3 routers and you only want it to connect to the super fast, say your GTAX E11000, then you can just have it blocked on this one, and it will only connect to the other router, the faster one you want it to, so it won't automatically change. So next we're moving on to the LAN. So here we have several tabs again. So this just gives you your basic rundown of your LAN, and again here you can change the IP address of the router and then also the subnet. Again, this is more advanced, and don't forget, if you do change the IP address here, it will change where you need to type in to actually access the router. So unless you really want to for any reason, just be wary. And again here, the host name you can change, and that's just the name that shows up on your network for your connected devices. Next is the DHCP. So most people will have this switched on. The only thing when time you'll have this switched off is if you've got another an actual main modem connected to your fiber network or your cable network, and that does your DHCP for you, and then you can switch this off. But as you can see here, this is the default. It automatically switches it up, so you can then here you can see the numbers. So this is the selection, so when every time a device connects to it, it will give it a number between 192.168.1.2 all the way to ending in 0.254. So anything between those two them last numbers, you'll get an IP address of that. If you want to change this range, you can do that here, but again be wary, it does disconnect you, and if you forget it then it won't. Again, there's an option down here that most importantly some people might want to use is the manual assignment. So this is where you can select a device, say like my Mac Mini, and then you can have it have this IP address on your network all the time, so you know you can connect to it like that. Next is the route. So basically what this is, another quite advanced feature that most people will never use. Basically just you can set up routing routes, and if you do need more about this is on the Asus website. IPTV, so again some of you might have this, and it does have these options here on here, so you can see the on the different options for LAN and things like that. So you can then change it to LAN, and then you do have different drop downs here for different companies and things like that. And again, you've got the options here if you do have any IPTV set up. And then lastly we have the switch control. So it does support jumbo frames, so you can enable that here and then click apply like most. So next, moving on to the WAN. Again, WAN is your internet port. So this is most of the time you'll have either this as PPOE or you'll have this as automatic, depending on your internet service provider setting. Again, you've enabled. All of these should stay the same. The only one, again, this one, I don't know why it has it on as default. It's best to switch this off. It's only if you're having issues again with certain devices that are not connecting to the internet, because they have to open up certain ports automatically. It makes your life a bit easier sometimes. So if having this off does cause you trouble, then switch it on by all means. But personally, because of the security issues around this, I normally have this by default switched off. And again, in the risk assessment under AiProtection, it advises you to switch it off as well. Again, you've got your WAN IP address settings that will be here. Your DNS settings, again, you can set up your custom DNS instead of using your internet service provider ones. So you can use a Google DNS, Open DNS, and Cloudflare DNS. So there's just 3 of the bigger ones that I know of that you can use. Again, authentication, you don't need to worry about too much to be honest with those. And then special requirements are here if you need to replicate the MAC address of your router for any reason, that your internet service provider only allows certain routers to connect. Next, you've got the dual WAN, and as you probably know, it's a dual WAN, so you can select 2 ports to be actually on here to act as your internet connection, and then one of them could be your failover. So if the first internet port goes down, then it will automatically switch over to the next one, so you always have internet. And also you do have the option of USB here, so you can plug a 3G or 4G USB dongle in. But again, beware that USB one is only certain USB makes and models that are supported, and even when I used those, there was still a bit buggy. I had problems with it. But you can go to the FAQ at the top here, and that will take you to another one, a page where it will give you information. Then you'll have the port trigger. So again, this is like your opening the ports on your router, so this will open it temporarily. Most people won't really need to use this, but the information is there if you need it, and the option is there. Then you have your virtual server and port forwarding. So it gives you the information here where you can open up certain applications to access the internet. If you run servers and things like that on your network, you can open up these ports using this option here. Then we have the DMZ. So basically a virtual DMZ will open up whatever device you put in on the list here to the internet. So the firewall, nothing will protect the device that you're connecting. Unless you really need this, always have this off and select no, because I can't see any real application where someone at home will need to have this switched on unless you're running a server or something advanced. Most of the time you can open ports individually instead of having it open to the internet totally. Then you have the DDNS. So as it says here, this is the dynamic domain name system. So as in previous videos I've mentioned, this is where you can actually set up a web address for your router so you can access it more easy. So instead of having 192.168.1.1 and trying to remember that, because don't forget most people have a dynamic IP address for their WAN, for their internet, so that causes confusion when you come to connect it over the internet and you're outside the house. So instead this will put a web address with that and automatically update it. So you could have router.asus.router.com. Or you can have from different companies, and you can choose the custom domain. So it's easy for you to remember. You can just type that in and it will automatically connect to this router from outside the network. And lastly, we have NAT pass-through. Again, most of these will be enabled. You can disable which ones. If you're not going to be using any VPNs or any of these features, you can mostly time disable them. It just gives you a bit more security, but if you've got no issues, then just leave them on as default. There should be no problems. Next, we're going on to IP version 6. So again, now as we know that the IP version 4, the IP addresses seem to be running out on the internet. We've seen stories and things like that of them running out soon and everything. So this is the new version 6, so it does support this, and here you can run whichever one you want to. Again, it depends on your network layout and also from your internet service provider, so it's best to always ask them or look up their page about internet setting up IP version 6 on your router. Then we have the VPN. So this is another really good feature of this router. It supports, you can have different kinds of VPN. So you can have PPTP, OpenVPN and IPsec VPN. The 3 options here. And again, PPTP is old and less secure, so I advise not using that. These other ones here are a bit more advanced and of course are more secure. So you've got OpenVPN, and this is where you'll have probably a lot more configuration to do, and I've got other videos, you can see my playlists that I go through that in more detail, so you can do that. And the same with the other one here as well. So these ones are more supported. If you want a more user-friendly VPN, we'll come on to that when we go to the 3rd tab. Then you have VPN client. As it says here, clients are often used to connect to a VPN server to access private resources securely. So here you can set up a profile from a VPN provider and have certain, like a device, connect by your VPN. Sometimes it comes in handy if perhaps if you want your device to look like it's coming from a different country, so perhaps you want to access different streaming channels, or if you just need to access content that is geo restricted to certain countries. And as I said here is Instant Guard. So this is quite a new feature from Asus. So this is their own VPN. So you download a separate VPN Instant Guard app for your iOS device or a Google device or Android, and then you can switch it on here, and then it will automatically give you access. And you just open up the app and you can connect, and so if you're outside the house you can securely VPN into your home network, and using their app, and it's just simply one touch button. So I know some people have had problems with it, but you need to make sure that you've got dynamic DNS set up, and also you also have installed in your phone the app, the Asus router app as well, because it won't work. So basically I found if you have this one installed first, then install the Instant Guard, then you should be fine. Moving on to the firewall, so as we can see here, it's on by default. It does have the DOS protection off by default. I personally normally switch that on. It doesn't take up much resource or memory, so I normally leave that on for extra protection. Again, here you've got the basic rules here, and again all the rest you can leave on as default. You have a URL filter, so that's like your internet address filter. So as it says here, it's basically a key in the keyword for sites you want to block. So if you want to block ABC XXX, you can just type that in there and it'll block any device on your network connecting to that website, or a website with that name actually in it. Then you have keyword filter. So again, this is like the URL filter. So it just limits, so you can block certain websites and specific words from being accessed on your network. Then you have the network services filter. Again, as you can see here, this gives you much more details. I won't go into too much, as you can see it quite clearly, good explanation on the screen. You can just pause that, but it does give you the features around here where you have to switch it on yes, and then you can either have the devices connected that you've added below on the network services filter table. You can have them as allow or deny, so you can choose, and then also you can set up the days of the week, and then also the time as well, so that's always good. Then we go on to the administration. So this is one where you can actually change the operation of your router. So as you can, most of people will have this as your wireless router mode, but then you've got your AI mesh or access point if you just want it to act as a wireless device, and then you have repeater, media bridge, and your AI mesh node that's specific just to that. There is information that you can look this up, and then I can put that on the right of the screen where you can have more information on each of these, so you can pause the screen and have a look. Next is the system. So this is where it goes into the actual system settings, and this is where you can change your login, your password. Most of these options you can actually have on as default. Leave as default as they're here. You don't really need anything unless you're having issues. One thing I would do is that there is a known problem between interference on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency and USB 3. So if you're not actually using the USBs, just turn that down to USB 2. Sometimes it causes interference, sometimes it doesn't. Then you've got your time zone you can set up, and then also it will auto log out after 30 minutes, so that's good. You've got your WAN redirect here as well. And then if you do have any issues, or you think it would be good to have, don't forget these devices are on 24/7 every day, 365 days of the year. So if you do like any kind of computer that's got software and everything running on it all the time, you can click, and you can set up what days you want it to reboot automatically, say at night time when no one's using it. So it automatically restarts, so it's always good. You can enable Telenet, so it does have that access feature where you can actually go into the command screen and actually type in the commands there for it. And most people will not use this, that's fine. Authentication mode, so you can have, is by default is HTTP, so this is where you'll get on the top of the screen where it says normally it's not secure, and you don't have a padlock. So I personally select HTTPS. Just remember, when you do change it to that, when you come to go back into the router, you need to, or you're on your app on the phone, you need to change it back to the option of HTTPS, or you need to type that manually in front of the 192.168.1.1, so you can connect to the this configuration screen again and access the router. Again, you've got the two options here for enabling access outside the network. As this one here, they normally advise against it, having it switched on, but you do have to have this switched on if you have the app or Instant Guard installed. It automatically asks you to install that, but it does switch your authentication mode as well automatically to HTTPS. It does that within the app. Then we have the firmware upgrade, so you will have like a little bell that will come up here flashing when there's there. You do have the option of just having that switched on, so you can have it automatically download the latest firmware, or you can have it, you can just click the check and then it will just manually check the internet for the latest. You do have a version here where you can manually download it from the Asus website, like you've seen in my previous videos, and you can click the upload and then upload it from your downloads folder or where you've saved it on your PC or Mac. Here you can then have your factory, so if you're selling the device or you're getting rid of it, you can restore it back to factory default settings, or it's always a good idea is to save some settings, so if you ever have any problems with an updated firmware or any issues you're having and you want to factory reset it, then you can restore your settings here. And as again here you can just basically choose a file that you saved and then you can upload it, and it will make life much easier from having to retype everything back in again. Again, you've got feedback, so this is their feedback about Asus products and things, and then lastly is their privacy tab. So this is their privacy. Some people don't like is because Asus will see some of your information when you've got AI protection on and things like that, because of course they've got to identify what's on your network, so it does that sometimes by that AI in the cloud. So just making sure that you are wary of that. Then you have your system log, so basically under there there's several tabs, and these are all kind of logs and information where you can actually find what's happening in the background, but also if you're having any errors or disconnections, you can see that here. And you can got one for wireless, your DHCP, so that's the addresses for your network, again for version 6, and then for port forwarding and routing and your connections that you would have to the internet. And again, you can click the refresh button and that will refresh it for you so you can get the most active. And then we go on lastly to the network tools. So this is where if you want to diagnose anything, again these are advanced features, is that you can ping somewhere or trace route a website and it will diagnose it here, so it's making sure it's connecting to the internet. And then you have NetSat as well, so another diagnostic tool for your network. Wacom LAN, basically like we said before, is where you can type in the MAC address of your PC or other device, and you can, if it's in sleep mode, then you can wake it up, and then so it can start backing up or anything like that you want to. And then you have the advanced features around the smart connect rule. So like me, like I've got it currently switched on, so as we said before, we've got one network name for both, and the router is actually deciding where the devices go. You can then choose your much more advanced features here, so about the utilization of bandwidth and when it connects over. So say if you're on the 5 gigahertz and the router realizes that you're too far away and it would be faster for you to go on the 2.4, it might switch you over to 2.4. Sometimes that might be a bit of a pain, because when it gets to a certain distance, you might still get a faster connection, but the router will automatically connect you to 2.4. You can adjust the settings here using the RSSI. Again, I won't go into great detail about this because this is another video by itself, but you can look up the details, but in here is where you can actually edit this information. So that's all the information we've got, all the settings for general and advanced for the RT-AC86U. I hope you found this useful, and again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I'll try and answer them the best of my abilities. Thanks for watching and have a great day.